welcome to Behind the Jokes. I'm happy to be here at the Irish Inquiry. I'm Aidan Killian. I'm your host. I'm here to host 6 weeks. This is the first episode of the season. We're going to do 6 shows where we interview the 6 greatest minds on the planet, the comedians, the brilliant, the unique, quirky individuals I've met on the planet traveling around as a comic, which I used to do before COVID regulations came in and stopped me earning a living and laboring for love and doing what I was born to do. And I'm not the only one. Staring at the sun are the lyrics from a U2 obscure song, I believe. There's many human beings in my position, and probably in many of your positions too, that aren't able to work right now. So I wanted to know, what are the comics doing? How are they spending their time? What do the comics, what do the comedians, what do the people who are able to make things funny, to create laughter, to create the audible expression of merriment and joy? What do those people think? Which we all are, but these people earn a living from making you laugh, from creating laughter. What kind of a job is that? What do you do? I make people laugh. What do you get paid? Loads of money. And what do you do with it? Laugh. So I'm interviewing. I'm being a very serious interviewer, and I'm interviewing a man called Craig, who's a friend of mine. I met him 10,000 years ago. I'd say nearly 10 years ago. I was flying through Singapore, and I stopped and I was gigging. He was the headliner. He was the main act, and I was his support act. I came on and did 15 minutes or so. And this man did over an hour of comedy, which is quite rare in the comedy world. Usually people do, a headliner does about 40 minutes, over an hour of amazing comedy. And the next day I came and I expected him to do the same set like all comedians do. And he did like a brand new hour and a half. And he broke my heart because I realized I'll never be able to do that. So I quit comedy. No, I didn't. I waited till COVID killed comedy. I haven't even brought him in yet. And he's here. Craig Campbell from Canada, the legend. This guy, we've met on so many countries. Craig, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm sure more wonderful to hear your memory that brought back my memories of that week in Singapore. And
it was your birthday.
It was, and you bought me Singapore slings.
No, you bought me. Listen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just met this beautiful human being, and we're in Singapore, and I wanted to try a Singapore sling.
Yeah.
So we went to Raffles, which is an expensive hotel.
Yeah.
I was on a date, not a date. I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were going to share one because they were so expensive. They were $33 plus tax.
Yeah,
and then Craig came, and it was his birthday, so I was like, "Oh no,
Still hurts.
I don't want to look mean in front of him, so we better get one each, and it's his birthday, so I have to pay it." And it's like $100 bill. And then Craig got another round, and I felt like crying. And I went to the toilet, and you paid the whole thing. You insisted on paying. Yeah, because I was the poor headliner.
I can't believe the card went through. Now that we're remembering that. But yeah, that was spectacular, and it's easily. I'm sure that's the most expensive Singapore sling that you could possibly get from the original Singapore sling venue, Raffles. It's how rare a time that you get a chance to do that, and I'm more so wonderfully remembering those gigs. It was awesome. That was
John. What's his great? He's a wonderful comic. The Singapore and the other gigs in the Crack House, Malaysia. At the time he ran both of them, as far as I remember.
Aussie.
Yeah, Jonathan. He can speak 7 languages. Extremely intelligent man. I'm just forgetting his second name.
Yeah, he's a wild man. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that Singapore is like an odd bit of connections in that world, but regardless, I do remember those gigs and Jonathan Atherton.
There you go. That's it. I love him. I think he's
it's astonishing. I can remember a different hour every night, but I don't remember the guy who books the gigs.
Did an hour and a half the second night. I'd never seen it done in my life. I'd never seen it done. Honestly, I was so extraordinarily, profoundly impressed.
I just absolutely love performing there. It's my favorite place in Asia to perform anyway. And it just, again, like the crossover, not just you being Irish, but if you remember that, just like, I think there was like a Japanese couple in the crowd, which rarely happens anywhere in the West. And, there's just a crossover of so many different cultures. And that to me is just like the most amazing milieu to entertain. And especially, like when we were speaking just just before you came on the air of all the places that we've been drinking in our life. But there's a lot of, you know,
we've done Ireland. You came to visit me in Ireland and helped me with one of my show recordings. Thank you. Appreciate it to this day.
Yeah, that was spectacular. Also, got to meet your family. I enjoyed that absolutely. Yeah.
Andy.
And Andy, and that was another, and then there's another drinking night. Yeah, that horrible. I think I told you before, that horrible moment when you're really tired anyway, and it's really late at night, and then you realize that your host is going to make you finish the bottle before you go to sleep. And it was like, and it hadn't even, at the moment of that realization, Aidan, we hadn't sniffed the cap of it yet. It was just like, I'd rather be in a hole in a ditch trying to catch winks right now. It was one of those ones. It was just like, you know, whether it was travel or at the end of a series of gigs or whatever it was like pure exhaustion. And it was Jack Daniels, and he just kicked the cap off of it, just like now the weekend starts. Like, oh shit, I thought it was ending just now. And we just had a wonderful night, as you'd imagine, and then walked the dog the next day, and that was I think was beautiful.
Where else? We've been to Edinburgh, Vietnam, Singapore, Bangkok,
Qatar?
Vietnam, Oman,
Qatar?
Qatar,
Oman, yeah.
And
Thailand, of course, you'd mentioned. Yeah. Bangkok, we'd spent time there, yeah.
And this is what happens as a comedian. We bump into other comedians all over the world.
Yeah.
In Australia, London, England. You do Canada. I've never been there. I haven't as a performer.
You'd love it.
But could you just describe to the audience, would you be able to describe what an average week would have looked like for you, or an average month? You know, what would your schedule be like?
Well,
say 2 or 3 years ago.
I think luckily, and 2-3 years ago, I'm glad you put a finger on it, because I was going to say that the graduation of experience of what stand-up has been like over my experience with it, my lifetime of it, has just evolved, and maybe, you know, in a horrible way, as you know, the reason that we're speaking now, that ability to adapt is really, you know, one of our biggest detractions, just because, you know, you can become comfortable with your scenario quite easily, you know. But I'd say like 3-4 years ago, as a stand-up, it was for me, it was just touring my own shows, you know, in little art venues, you know, small some regular like pubs that would be regular gigs, would put on a special night, and I could bring my road show in there. I think at that time, actually, you know, if I could toot my own horn, my pinnacle was I think the Kings in Aberdeen, which I think it's tops out at 1,400, but I had like 1,250 in there, which was like madness in my world. Wow. And it was really that was like, you know, it was amazing, as you'd imagine. Like,
I mean, you've done the Michael McIntyre and the Apollo and that stuff, but
I've not done the Apollo. I have done Michael McIntyre's. Yeah, I wasn't ever gifted the Apollo, as it
Glastonbury.
I've done Glastonbury. Yeah, a decade and a bit.
From what I remember, anyway, I wasn't sure if it was you or the mushroom speaking.
Yeah. That was an exercise in performing in that state of mind, you know, and actually in many ways finding that state of mind in the audience, and, you know, understanding how to manipulate a much more comatose animal, you know, in pretty trying conditions. It was really something. The difference between like a Thursday night show in Glastonbury and then like the Sunday, I would often close the circus tent at like 1 a.m. on the final performance night, the Sunday. Wow. And it was like, you know, if anybody was even there's a lot of like pulling cow shit out of their eyes.
The end of Glastonbury. Yeah. And you're trying to do jokes, and you've got long stories as well. Wow.
Yeah. Trying to keep people's attention in that atmosphere. But, you know, for me, the moment that I had now, Aidan, was just remembering seeing like one of the most famous, like infamous, I saw a lot of infamous performances, and sad to mention a fella that recently passed, Ian Cognito, who's, you know, a warrior of warriors, of road warriors, and you know, reputation will always resonate. But I got to see his like very, very famous performance.
Wow.
I brought him actually to the stage where Aidan, he tomahawked into the crowd, like just like timber, like gone at the ankles, and just, you know, on whatever he was on, I could state it, but we don't need to incriminate him. He just like peeled off like a tree and caught his throat on like a crowd barrier, like just literally garroted himself in a fall from like a pretty high, like 6 foot stage. Like if he just fell on the grass, he easily could have broken some ribs, but instead he caught his throat on a piece of steel on the way down, and then kind of like wishboned his belly, you know, through from
That's
the
gross.
back,
What happened?
and then the freakiest thing about it, Aidan, I'm in kind of like call like, we need a helicopter now, get a helicopter here right now. Instead, he kept doing his act, Aidan. I don't know.
And the show must go on.
Just like started to, you know, kind of was affected by it. Like his throat was affected by it, but he just started like crying out, you know, where was I? You know, just like, he's a zombie. He's not alive. You know, it was like a pretty wild event. But you know, I'm proud to have.
So it's a planned, crafted joke of his. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. His circus act.
Great. Tell the world, tell the 8 billion people watching.
Yeah.
What's it like now? I mean, this COVID thing happened in March, or well, really a bit before then, but the regulation started in March 2019. Certainly for me, that changed things. My comedy club in Singapore closed down.
Yeah.
My events closed down. There was nothing to do. We said it was going to be a few weeks. So how has it affected you? What are you doing now?
Comparatively, Aidan, to interrupt, sorry, it's comparative to like telling that kind of story of that kind of memory, and you know, those exciting moments that our careers allow us to experience. It's a black hole of despair. It's the actual inverted opposite of that. And I've spoken to, even last night, I was speaking to a great musician that's based out of Cyprus, and you know, we were just he was curious about doing comedy, and I was like, well, you know, you got a guitar,
you missed it.
Easily just, you know, in the middle of whatever you're doing, just like tell a joke, you know, in between bits, just, you know, you've already got their attention. There's an audience there, like it's, you know, keep on rocking in the free world, you know, just like, and hey, you know, nice to see you. Where are you from? You know, it's just like they dovetail with each other, and it just reminded me of like how exciting it is, just like for him in particular in the conversation, but just what it was like for us to just go and gig. How, you know, what we're dealing with on a Friday night now.
I know.
It would have been, we wouldn't have any time to chat at this time of night. We'd be like on the road somewhere, or perhaps going to our second or third show, you know. And if you go back, like you go back 7 or 8 years for me, that was when, like, you know, the UK was festooned literally with gigs. I was talking with another group of comics the other night, and they were talking about doing 2 Zoom gigs on one night. And I was like, I remember opening in Cardiff, middling in Bristol, and closing in Birmingham.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Like, I remember those days, right? You know, I remember like Mike Wilmot coming over from Canada, and I think setting the record. Sean Collins would have been close, and they had the same driver, but like 7 or 9 gigs on a like Saturday night. 7 or 9.
Wow, that's like Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah. Except, you know, like 20-minute spots, and you know, just that like surreal feeling of like looking at the audience and not knowing why they're not the same group you were looking at like 20 minutes before. You're the wrong front row, you know, just like not knowing where you are in your mind or your bits, and you know,
the joke again, the same. What?
Totally. Well, and unfortunately, that was like what really marked or complected that Cognito set, was that he was already, before he tumbled off the stage, he'd already done the same joke twice. That the audience at that point was like a panto crowd that were like, you know, you already did it, you know, just like doing it again, finishing it with them, you know, like, you know, these moments that are just like, you know, yourself, you're a storyteller. Those are what, you know, a normal gig, who cares about you? You want the exciting ones, but that's what's different, you know. Now that's not happening. There's not that like warmth of of reflection off of a live situation, off of, you know, a live audience. There's no festivity, you know, there's nobody listening to us now to, you know, to get a reflection of their enjoyment. If they're enjoying it, they're probably not laughing out loud. They're probably somewhere comfortable in their own, you know, environs that takes away. Yeah, you know, you can't smell them, you can't hear them, you know, there's no life, there's no atmosphere, and it's you know, it's cancerous, it's hideous, it's illegal, it's against our human rights, it's in every way a disaster of an attack on humanity is what it is.
And Craig,
it's not a mistake.
I'm getting from what you're saying here that you don't love lockdown. You don't think it's a great idea, and it's affected the arts, certainly the comedy world and the music world, all the arts world. But it's probably, they say, it's been said that it's going to be over soon and we'll all go back to normal. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a real hideous carrot. That's really a deceptive way to further deceive people who are less cynical than I, perhaps, and maybe to draw in a few people who are just like on the edge of cynical as far as like kicking the can down the road goes. And again, like, you know, this is, and I'm sure not for you as well, it's not our first discussion of this type of situation. And people talk about like this sort of, you know, oh, you know, we just wear the masks for another few months and we just social distance for another little while. But actually, I say that now entirely facetiously, because if you're listening to anything mainstream, they're confirming that that's not going to be the case, that they are not going in any way to lift those types of restrictions. And what we can look for more is that they're going to go the other direction, to be more draconian in terms of their mandates of things. But
how could they? What could be worse? Everything's already shut, Craig. I mean, all the bars have been shut in Ireland since March. I'm in Amsterdam right now. There's a curfew. There was riots recently. There's like breaking into shops. They're smashed. They're putting fires, throwing bikes and cars on fire because it's the first time they've been in curfew since, well, the Nazis. It's quite a while. It's quite a trigger, as they say nowadays.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And people are uncomfortable with that. I'm uncomfortable with it. I hear helicopters every night when I'm trying to sleep.
The problem though, Aidan, isn't that they're uncomfortable with it. It's that not enough people are uncomfortable with it. There should be the bonds of this, like has happened through the resistance that the restaurants and bars have done in Italy, has to, you know, like opening up in Florida. That's what has to happen.
Florida's open, Italy's open. They forced it. They just opened, and then the cops had to let them because you can't arrest everyone.
It's force of numbers. It's a very thin blue line, and unless you pull in the military, there's very little that you can do to resist that kind of like, you know, common consensus. But that's what has to happen, and it had to happen yesterday. And that it didn't happen yesterday, and here particularly, and for yourself as well, that it's not likely to happen in the very near future, just creates more mayhem and more damage and more destruction of society. That for you and I translates into, and again, I've spoken about this, you know, a lot. It's a topic of conversation I'm fucking all about, right? You know, that like these are our audience members. People say it's not just a restaurant. It's not just a bar that people like now can't go to and play cards or whatever your like fantasy is. It's that the proprietor there doesn't have an income now, and his family now isn't provided. The bar staff don't have money in their pockets to go and, you know, to go to the cinema that doesn't even let them in anymore without a COVID passport or whatever other draconian, or, you know, it's so hard for me to speak to you right now, Aidan, without like just being a colorful tapestry of expletives, right? It's really hard for somebody that's expressive to just trying not to like say every swear word that comes into my head at 1,000,000 miles a minute, because it's absolutely, and those are the good ones. Those are, again, I hesitate because I know on the back of some of the more palatable swear words are the ones that would like make people turn off the channel, just because like this has to end, because what they're doing is destroying any potential for it to recover. And I say this like, you know, if they stopped doing what they're doing now with their restrictions, it wouldn't be 2 years. It's not going to be like a 5-year plan that gets us back to where we were. It's not going to be 10 years or 2 decades. It's going to be much longer, a generation. You know, you're into that 20-year program. If they started to reverse what they're doing now, where there'd be any sense of recovery, because like, you know, I'm talking to a buddy in Cyprus, and he's talking about he gets off the beaten path, and the businesses are like just, you know, boarded up, closed, they're destroyed. So as soon as you're off of like the high street, the main street, the multinationals, essentially, everybody else is starving. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but that's what it's like here as well. So all of those little businesses in the UK that normally, as you mentioned, feed bar staff, feed the, you know, the trickle down of that economy, leads to people like, hey, why don't we go to Iron Apple for the weekend? Well, right on, call EasyJet. Yeah, it's only Thursday, we can do it. Yeah, you know, like the way that people work when they like to, you know, be festive and entertain themselves. Though that whole business doesn't exist anymore. That whole group of like people that paid to come and see our gigs aren't in any potential to go and see a gig. They don't have jobs to begin with. And then, of course, as you and I both know, maybe more than most, that in the background, and people should know this, is all of the, you know, the Great Reset rhetoric that's like, oh, you know, people over 50 are going to have to be retrained because a robot's going to be doing most of the deliveries, and all this kind of like, you know, human destruction rhetoric that, you know, that a lot of people are just like hearing and thinking, yeah, it's okay if like half of the country doesn't have a job, isn't it? Yeah, that kind of works out. And then the rest of everything just goes real well. And it's like, yeah, it means that like Subway's open at the airport and that's it, dickhead. Like use your brain. That's but like
Craig, to be devil's avocado here. What if, right? Yeah. What if everybody not working creates a new scenario where people do less, and by doing less that means we possibly will damage the world, the planet less. We'll have more time to look within. Is it a possibility that there is happiness to be found? No, it's a serious question.
I know it's serious, and I'm just like really happy that there's an ocean between us right now, because I would strangle you in the room right now. I wouldn't even let you get that far down the fucking plank of facetiousness to like try and present that like.
I'm trying to be a neutral host.
There's more duckies in the pond. The sky is clean. You know, it's just like that. You're playing exactly what the counter narrative is. I get that 100%. That, you know, that's what they've sold people as taking away people's livelihoods and reason for being and motivation to, you know, to have pride in their lives. To, you know, the idea that it's the same to have the government pay you like a welfare check that it is for you to actually just go out and deliver pizzas, you know, like that. It doesn't have to be that you're like, you know, a psychiatrist or a nurse, for example, or, you know, somebody who has a different type of career. Everybody enjoys, like, you know, rather than having somebody just give them $5 and say, forget about it, you know, everybody, you have pride. You're just like, yeah, but let me shine your shoes or something. Can I, you know, like, I'm good at stuff. You see it all the time. You and I, you know, I'm sure you do. You read as much as I do. You see people. I saw one from Scotland the other day, you know, just, hey, I've lost my job. You know, I'm a strong worker. I'm a virtuous person. You know, I have a family. I'm really willing to do anything. If anybody has anything out there, I'd like to help out, you know, and like, that's because people have pride. People have pride.
You say that it's more than pride. It's beyond that. It's this idea of this sense of self, sense of worth. I want to create. I want to be able to create the ability to feed myself and protect myself and my family, and feel worthwhile. Like, I mean, we get the validation from the audience when they laugh, and in a way that's some sort of payment. But we also get paid money to do it. Now, both of those have been taken away, and I would have a genuine fear, and I'm quite serious about this. I find a lot of comedians to be slightly unstable. You know, they've got a history. Something's happened to them a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of them are very vulnerable. They might seem very confident on the outside, but there's something there, something missing, or something that's happened that they're still trying to work on. And maybe the stage helps them do that. And without that stage and without that money, and I know they get government payments to keep them going for now, but I think now we might lose some of our you know, I think it's quite likely we're going to start losing comics.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it. Way to go, bring the show down.
Well, that's what they're officially, that's what Rishi Sunak is saying, that you have to retrain, and it's not just comics, as you and I know. It's like,
what
it's
are you going to
musicians,
retrain
actors.
as?
Well, exactly. I'm over 50. I'm one of those people that, like, the Great Reset will just mash into the ground, right? Because, like, you're not going to be a great asset on a building site. I'm not going to, like, carry pails of mud around like I did when I was 17 and 18 before, while I was moonlighting, while I was still doing stand-up, as a youngster. It's just like, I'm not a benefit to the workforce unless I'm this guy right here, standing on the front table screaming at the people in the balcony. That's what it's what I do. It's
I've been screaming for years, and this world's still a mess. What's going on? Craig, what about the vaccine? It's out now. A lot of people are taking it. Do you have any belief in this? Can it help? Is it possible that they could release it and things might go back to some sort of opening again?
No. First of all, I would have to say as a caveat that it's vaccines, not vaccine. Each of them has their own specific mechanisms and technologies, which makes the latest thing reported by the British government the pick and mix program. I don't know if you've caught that, but they're like studying, I think, 800 people that are going to receive varying different vaccines in different quantities and dosages to see their reaction to it. Essentially, just like even worse than the human guinea pig experiment that they've been doing previously. They're now just going to randomly put different shots into people, and it's abhorrent. It's like the Nuremberg trials dealt with this because of what the Nazis did to people in medical experimentation. So I mean, it's just like, it's utterly revolting at the point that we're at. But do I think that it will in any way like lead to a benefit for society? Not in the slightest. I don't believe that in the slightest. I believe that they're using it as a leverage to bully people to themselves be infected with, again, like a variety of technologies, which is obviously what they're going for. But a lot of people don't know that, like, the prior vaccines, there's always that thing, Aidan, people are just like, oh, I'm not anti-vax, I'm just anti the COVID vax. I heard a bad thing about that. It's just like, well, clearly you don't know anything about vaccines then, because, like, the fact that we don't know anything about the COVID-19 vaccines in terms of like long-term testing or long-term response to the testing is just like showing ignorance that you're not aware that, like, if you look up the VAERS program, for example, in the States, which a lot of people are doing now, I think it's at like a payout at 4.5 billion is what it's out at actually now. And most people don't realize that the number one payout for injury to vaccines is the flu vaccine. It's the number one. It's the highest risk of all vaccines.
But Craig, let's be fair. The flu vaccine has worked because people don't get the flu anymore this year.
Well done. I'm glad you made that connection. Yeah, it's just, we're just in clownland, absolutely. And I'm glad that you made that point, which, is just another, there's so many different like layers of the deception that's going on here. All of the people who are, of course, in bed with the manufacturers of these vaccines, who are the ones that are mandating these policies. I mean, if that's not a window into what's going on, for me, one of the number one things, as soon as Tony Blair gets involved in trying to promote vaccines, it's like, well, you know what? Do you need Satan himself to like crawl out of the loam and grab you by the ankle before you realize what kind of like nefarious creatures you're acquiescing your life to? And I'm afraid that we're just seeing like a real revelation of cultural ignorance. I'm afraid, Aidan. I hate to be so insulting.
A revelation of cultural ignorance.
It's just that anybody would allow themselves to be experimented upon by something that's coming from such a polluted industry with so many different scandals behind them, with not a credible thread of integrity in their existence. And now they're using something that hasn't been long-term tested, that has all sorts of, we're now seeing just avalanches of, particularly with elderly and infirm people, just outright death. Like, it's a doctor. Look, death is at the door.
Just answer the question, Craig. Are you getting the vaccine or not?
Yes, yeah, so Tuesday. They're coming by on Tuesday. As soon as they knock, I'll ask, "What's in the bag?" Yeah, please. And and forget again, it's not, it's not one, it's multiple vaccines, right? It's a platform now. Anybody that thinks they're just like getting a one vaccine or even the second shot, and then like their COVID-19, penance is taken care of, and they're just going to be released into like, enjoy your holiday, take care, enjoy the cinema. It's just like, that's not going to happen. It's
Craig,
you're now tethered.
I've been called a lot of names lately since this kicked off, these lockdowns. I suppose for me, I really care about human rights. I really cared when the banks in Ireland created a situation where thousands of people lost their homes, and I was hurt personally, but I was able to recover. Not everybody was as lucky as me. I had support from friends and family, and I was lucky. Yeah. And I saw a lot of people lose everything, and it really hurt me that it was happening, and it was so obvious. And yet, I suppose the media, the government, or whoever, these perceived authorities, weren't there to protect us. If anything, maybe they facilitated or lubricated it to happen. Yeah. And I'm feeling like it's kind of happened again on a larger scale. And as I gently pointed it out, hey guys, maybe something's happening, instead of people going, oh yeah, Aidan, maybe, oh, don't worry about it, they turned on me and they called me names. Well, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a right-wing fascist, you're a, well, I won't even say some of the words, but they use, curse words at me, right? Yeah. On a regular basis. And I became very liberated from it, because I was like, oh, okay, well, these aren't my friends. This is fine. This is negative energy. It's nothing to do with me. I just don't give it back. As Buddha said, you can't fix hatred with hatred, just with love. And I really had compassion for them, because I saw them as like lost souls, or like children in the other room seeing monsters, screaming, I see a monster, and I'm like, don't worry, I'll put my arm around you. It's not a monster, it's just a jacket. Don't worry about it. What you see isn't real. What you see isn't real. Stop believing in it, these false imaginings, these hypothetical situations that you're making up inside your head. And now I have to admit, I'm a bit scared so far to talk about the vaccine, because I'm just talking about masks and lockdown, which for me is like obvious. But to talk about the vaccine, they're going to go. And a lot of friends have already reached out in advance. Intelligent people. I know. Have reached out and said, Aidan, don't say anything bad about the vaccine, because you'll be risking people's lives. You'll be responsible for people's deaths. Whoa. So even before I say anything, they're
corralling you into your opinion, your Overton window, the acceptable opinion that you can have to determine their friendship.
Right. Exactly. A little bit.
Yeah. So or bullying. You might want to call that bullying. Intellectual bullying, actually, is what that is. Yeah.
When I see you on stage, you do the most beautiful, family-friendly, often comedy sets that are open for everyone. Everybody would love it. But on Facebook, you're a different man.
Yeah. I'm honest, and I feel like that's part of what we're allowed to, not allowed to express anymore. That's exactly as we're speaking right now, that your opinions are only allowable within a framework, or you're rejected or ostracized, or whatever you want to call it, banished from the village, or and that's what we're dealing with. And I like to think that, especially as performers, that we're allowed to express. You're allowed to also be wrong. It's like I didn't sit down, as you're obviously aware. I'm not saying I'm a virologist or an epidemiologist.
Well, I actually thought you were Dr. Fauci. I thought you were the real Dr. Fauci. You were the closest I could.
Because Jesus, but yeah, I relax into thinking that we're allowed to be figurative and creative and artistic, and that's an allowable expression. I think when I used to tour with Frankie Boyle, he would say, I think that was one of his bits, he would say, jokes are what ifs. They're what if scenarios. They're not, they're not real life. And I think that's nothing comes from experimentation of behavior, of expression, of response to expression. And the idea that like people people with opinions like mine, and I expect fully that I'll be banished from social media, sooner rather than later, because the people that concur with me aren't there anymore. And the funnier thing for me, Aidan, is that the people that think that they'd like won arguments against us, I represent, just like they never take on board that like you're entirely towing the line of our oppressors. You're towing the line of people who are the ones that are silencing voices. And yourself, a lot of people who consider themselves quite liberal are all about silencing other people's voices. They just love it. It's incredible to me that that's the case. So they don't seem to take on board that anybody who like might be there as your wingman doesn't exist anymore because they've been banned. They're not allowed to talk anymore. And you live in this world where people are like acting like they're sort of the rebels, but they're also towing the line of the mainstream media, the mainstream news, the tech giants. The people who should be in prison actually are being supported by those who think that they're most like open-minded in our society. And it's embarrassing for me.
I know, it's just a great twist. So this double speak, isn't it? This Orwellian double speak, this trick. Look, so here's a question I've been thinking about recently.
Yeah.
So these people are defending the very pillars of society that are attacking them, possibly. But at any moment, they're welcome to change sides as they get more information. So they might realize, well, lockdowns aren't great. Domestic violence has gone up. Suicides have gone up. You see mothers and fathers all over the world killing their own children, killing themselves, undetected cancers. That's in Ireland, it's a very small country. 10,000 people a year die from cancer. 10,000 people a year die from heart or cardiac issues, and 2,000 with COVID, right?
Yeah.
With COVID, right? But yet the undiagnosed heart and the undiagnosed cancer is probably going to be way more than the people with COVID, not to mention of COVID, obviously be significantly more than that.
Yeah.
So when we look at that, at some stage, the truth will be seen. People will see it. And there's going to be a moment where we're all responsible for whatever we did or didn't do. We have to take responsibility for who we are and how we play out our stories in this life. And I think right now, there's definitely time if someone changes their mind and they start to see more knowledge, more information, they can, of course, they're welcome. But there'll be a moment where I'm not sure if people will be able to change sides. They'll have dug in too far.
Yeah.
And that's
the tipping point.
I wonder about that. Because I'll be like waving at my family. I told you. See ya.
Well, that's why it's harsh, and I'm harsh if you've seen my online presence. I'm as harsh as they get. I'm as harsh as I can express myself to be. But complicity is collaboration. People don't realize that just like being okay with things is a decision. Another expression is indecision is a decision. If I think Desmond Tutu made famous that if you're not on the side of the oppressed, you're on the side of the oppressor. That's just it. Like you don't get to be that's what this era has made very plain for people. You don't get to be an observer. You don't get to be a casual observer. You don't get to be a bystander. I took someone to task the other day on Twitter because they were talking about how they were looking out the window at the mask rally, the anti-mask rally. And they felt like, why are they not allowed to go to the park and not get harassed in their group of friends? But the anti-mask rally is there. And I'm like, why didn't you join the anti-mask rally? Why did you not get out of why didn't you put down the ice cream and your furlough check? And why don't you put on your little slippers and wander out into like, why do you think those people are fighting for, your right to breathe unencumbered also? And that's what people, have to really, unfortunately, I think you're aware as I am, Aidan, they have to turn that corner. And I've heard it as well. Another thing that people have to turn the corner with, and I feel horrible to say it, but like things have to get way worse. I know other people, and I'm sure you do as well, people that I relate with, people that don't even argue online. Like you're a great debater online. You engage these people. For me, it's just like, okay, die! Like, oh, sorry. Is that your mom too? Fuck her! Like, okay, yeah. Like, it's a different approach. Like we all have a different approach. But at the same time, it's just like, you have to understand that like neutrality is on the side of the oppressor. If you're not at this point.
You're inspiring me here. My family are the O'Murtics, the Murphys, and they came from Kinsale, the Battle of Kinsale, 1601. The English were coming, the Redcoats were coming, and the O'Murtics, they teamed up with the Hugh O'Donnell clan, the O'Donnells and the O'Neills, and they all got together, and the Spaniards were coming to help the Irish, and we were going to win. We were close with numbers, but the English convinced many of the landowners, if you stay neutral, we will let you keep your lives and your lands. And some of them were paid.
Yeah.
The Irish lost. History is what it is. Yeah. Famines, genocide, murder, everything has happened. But it might not have happened. And it's the neutrals.
Yeah, that tips the balance.
So, give me your best case scenario, because we do have to close up.
Of course.
Great for a show, but give me your best case scenario for the world. A nice vision. Is there any?
Yeah, no, you're speaking of that tipping point. I can't do that, Aidan. I'm afraid it's just like, I think that people just don't realize. If you've seen that analogy often shown in artwork of the iceberg, where they're just like, as you mentioned, the of COVID deaths at the top of it, and then just the below of carnage and more carnage to come. I don't see a way out of this that isn't like, conflagration, global conflict. I see it coming out of the States first. To me, that's the only place where there's still a movement of liberty that exists. I think that like Europe doesn't even have an opportunity to defend itself. It's not in a position to. I think people will be on cattle cars before they can say like, I'd rather not do that. Just like you can see the Brits are just slumbering while, a lot of the world is in look at European countries. Look at Denmark. Look at the movements in Italy, as mentioned earlier. There's riots in Poland is fighting for their opening their restaurants at Zakopane at the famous ski resort there. Actually resisting, and we're just not here. And the next stage will be whether or not the Yanks choose to like fight for their freedoms or die on the vine, which is basically what the Brits are doing. I don't see a great way out of this. I see it being very, very dark. When you hear what the government's actually saying, there's not a lot of positive to take from it. They're talking about, the Agenda 21, Agenda 30 plan, which you and I both know involves like just utter like ridiculousness. It sounds like science fiction to talk about it, but it exists. These are documents that are real. I love. There's a fellow named Mark Windows that I enjoy talking to. If any of your viewers ever get a chance, and I love that people say like, Agenda 21. That's a conspiracy theory, and he always says, no, it's a document. It's just like
it's a document.
Go ahead and like go read about it. Like that's what it is, and that's what these people are doing. And it doesn't involve you or your kids or your grandkids having like a Shangri-La a lifestyle or a free life in any way. It involves like things like, if you've heard of the rewilding projects, where you're going to be in smart cities. Where do you think all your smart motorways are going, you nimwits? Like they're going to smart cities that are not going to allow you to like go to the beach on the weekend because you're not allowed in that area because they're rewilding and reintroduce. Absolutely, they're already. You look everywhere. The restrictions, on the roads. There's one here. I saw another couple on the internet today. Road works changed for social distancing. These are people are just like out of their minds that they don't know that this is how many of these dickheads do you have to hear? Build back better. We're going to build back better. What are you going to do? I'm going to build back better too. Where'd you get that idea? I got it from the Build Back Better store. And it's just like that these people think for a moment that these politicians come up with anything on their own. That people like I'm going to say for any of your listeners that anybody thinks that like Boris Johnson is in charge of like anything other than holding up his fat fucking pants is just like, you're just out of your minds. If you think that changing one of these, fire Whitty, fire Hancock. You don't think that there's another Russian doll sitting right behind every one of those dickheads that's already bought and paid for and sold, and they're all there to be expendable? If you don't realize this is an agenda that goes way past and above and beyond these people, you just like, you're a nitwit. You're an embarrassment to human thinking over eternity. I don't see any good way out of this. Sorry.
Yeah. So Craig Campbell says you should wear your masks and get the double shot vaccine. Ring up now, get your vaccine straight away. It is all part of making the Build Back Better situation better for everybody. And you can find him on Apocalypse TV Apocalypse TV. Tell the world what you're doing now, Craig, because they want more of you. We want more of you.
Every Saturday. It's on the Iconic Network. It's called Apocalypse TV. Craig Campbell's Apocalypse TV. We're on episode 10. This week we had Chris Topless of the band Lost Vegas. Last week we had Dean Haglund from X-Files and his own series, The Lone Gunman. And I'm just interviewing, like you are, like-minded people that I know around the world that I've met along my travels, and we have a good old chinwag, and you know, I don't push people to join anything. I know there's many other things out there for them to enjoy, including your program, but that's what I'm doing. And I'm at Moosefucker on Twitter. If you want to be called a cunt or find out what I think of your mom, go ahead and get on that. And you know, if you want to send me a message, I'll ignore. I'm Craig A. Campbell on Facebook for a limited amount of time, I'd think.
Which is very true. Craig, I've always loved you. I still love you. You're a great human being. You're offering so much. I wish there was more comics and human beings like you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your courage and your strength and your humor.
Thanks.
I look forward to seeing you again whenever that's possible.
I can't wait to share a beer with you. I can't wait to gig with you. I can't wait to make people laugh in a small room with you again.
We'll get some little 50-seater room and just really enjoy it.
Thanks for asking me, Aidan, and good luck with what you're doing, please.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Come back. We'll be back next Friday. I'm doing 6 Fridays in a row. I think next Friday is going to be Phil K. Phil K. Or it could be Ardal Hanlon. Could be. He's a maybe. I haven't asked Tommy Tiernan. He's got his own thing on the RT somewhere. Our competitor. But anyway, we're gonna have a great. We'll have a great comic. Let's see who we have. Who knows? We'll see. Guys, have a great week. Have a great weekend. Don't be wearing masks and be happy.